Okay, thank you, Oliver. Just, yeah, I will try to hit the 6 p.m. mark. We'll have some absolutely amazing presentations today, but it's also been a long day. So I will try to hit the 6 p.m. Okay, so I'll be a little bit briefer in some areas. Just a very short introduction of myself. My name is Morten Wittrock. The family name is German, but I am nevertheless Danish. My background is in on-premise SAP integration, so that's PI and PO mainly. But lately my focus is on SAP Cloud Platform and the integration area of the platform. I was also in the SAP Mentor program around the same time as Oliver actually and Darren. And back in prehistoric times, I ran an open source project called Detrobulator, which was a unit testing tool for PI mapping programs, basically. Yeah, and I also organized the Danish Insight track in Copenhagen. We have an event coming up in November 25th, so you can mark your calendars already. And I do some blogging at the SAP community site as well. I want to just briefly introduce cloud integration, since that's the topic of my talk today. Some of you might not know about it. It's the SAP Cloud Platform service for integrating cloud to cloud services and cloud to on-premise. Obviously, okay, Matthias already mentioned this, there's a lot of functional overlap with PI and PO. But the main difference between the two is that cloud integration is hosted and managed by SAP or a partner infrastructure provider in a data center somewhere on the planet. And yeah, there's a Gartner term for that, of course, integration platform as a service, with the main difference being that not only are you integrating to cloud services and you're using some tooling in the browser in the cloud, but the actual integration flows, your integration development artifacts are running in the cloud as well. And incidentally, that is an actual SAP data center. Maybe you know of it. There's a site called sapdatacenter.com. You get a lot of information about how they actually work. Okay, so the title of the talk today is Cloud Integration Under the Hood. I won't be showing a lot of slides, but I will try to show some running code instead. The code and some of the conclusions, I will post those in the blog as well, if you're interested in seeing that.
So when did you put the slides together?
Over the last couple of hours. So what do I mean by looking under the hood? It's a metaphor, of course, for diving into the inner workings of something to figure out how does it actually work. And maybe make it reveal a little bit more of how things are working behind the scenes. Yeah, it's a car metaphor, of course. Your car has a literal hood you can look under to, I don't know, fix the engine. That's a topic for a different talk. Yeah, and another speaker. That's really not my area. Briefly about the difference in between cloud software and on-premise. So I absolutely love cloud software. I think that, well, in my book, SAP Cloud Platform is probably the coolest product that SAP ever made. There is.
Would you repeat?
Absolutely. It is, for sure. But there is one area where on-premise does have an edge and will probably keep that edge, and that is your ability to do some tinkering and exploring with the software. Because with on-premise software, you have quite a few avenues to do that. You can dig into configuration files. If there's an underlying database, you can examine the structure of the tables and the contents of the tables. You might even listen on network traffic to figure out how it communicates. if you have access to source code, you can learn pretty much anything there is to learn about the software. But even if you don't, you might have binaries you can decompile and still learn something. But many of those options we don't have in the cloud. You interact with the software in typically a browser-based set of tools, and you have an API available to you. But that doesn't mean that we don't have options at all. We just have to look tiny bit closer to find them. And that's what I'll be talking about today. And why is that interesting? Well, yeah, I think it's a great way to learn more about the platform and to learn more about the internals, and that will make you a better developer. And as I'll show later, there's some potential for building tools as well. And also, I'm just naturally curious, so last but not least, it can be a lot of fun. So for an initial really simple example, I'll take a look at the XSLT processor in cloud integration. Maybe you know of it already. XSLT is a standard language for writing transformations that change an XML document into something else. And the engine that actually does that is called an XSLT processor. And cloud integration has one. So that's one of the options for doing mappings in cloud integration. That's the XSLT processor. And from a high-level architecture perspective, that's really all you need to know. That cloud integration will run your XSLT style sheets. But you do need some more detail sometimes. And for this particular example, which happened in the real world actually, it was not made up. Some XSLT engines support Java extensions, which is a way to drop out of the style sheet and execute some Java code, especially to accomplish some of the things that are hard to do in XSLT, but easy to do in Java. So that's a Java extension. But whether you can do that or not depends on the processor. And the kind of XSLT processor in cloud integration is not documented. So that's a point where, okay, we need to convince the platform to let us know a bit more about the actual implementation details. And in this case, it's quite easy because XSLT itself has a standard way of querying the processor, which is a system property function. Let me very briefly show you a style sheet. This is a tiny bit of XSLT with a few calls to the system property function that queries the vendor of the processor, the product name, and the version. So, putting that into an integration flow in cloud integration, that's what we see on the screen here. It's really simple. It's basically just the execution of this style sheet, which is the same as we just saw. Oh, and an HTTPS channel, so I'm able to call this from the outside, which I'm going to do now from the Postman REST client. This is just the endpoint of that HTTPS channel that I added, with some authorization added, and I'm getting some XML back. Okay, so what did I learn? That the product is the Saxon processor. Not really that surprising, actually, because it's quite widespread. But maybe more interesting, the version of the processor, and in particular, it's the open source version of Saxon. Which means that I'm actually not able to execute Java extensions with the XSLT processor in cloud integration. So that's what we learned here. Continuing along those lines, I started blogging again on the SAP community site about a year ago or so. I did a lot of blogging in the early days in SDN and SCN, but I returned about a year ago. Actually, basically around the time of the redesign that Oliver was talking about. So it didn't scare me off. And I didn't really plan to, but quite a few of those blogs were centered around a theme like this XSLT process of version stuff, doing the same in the area of the underlying Apache Camel framework, which is the open source framework that runs the integrations. And I started thinking that these properties, like the version numbers of the Java runtime and the Apache Camel framework and so on, would be interesting to watch over time. Because some of those upgrades, they're actually updated quite frequently. And some of those updates bring with them new functionality. So I would like to be notified of those, but updates to these infrastructure components like Camel and XSLT and Java and so on typically don't make it into the release notes because it's too fine-grained. And the release notes about the major new functionality, major new stuff. So you won't read about an upgrade to Camel in the release notes. So I put together an integration flow running in Cloud Integration that continuously checks these values and compares them to how did they look the last time I ran this. So I run this every hour. And whenever it detects a change in one of those properties, like a new version number for Camel, it will format that into a tweet and post it to a Twitter feed. And I had also been looking for a fun use case for the Twitter adapter, and I hadn't been able to find one. So this was it. Let me just very quickly show you the Twitter feed. So that's twitter.com/HCI tracker. HCI is a forbidden abbreviation that doesn't exist any longer. It was the old product name, HANA Cloud Integration. But I haven't gone around to changing it yet. So these are the last couple of updates. The HCI build number has changed. The Camel version has changed. Going back a bit further, the Java runtime has changed as well. I track a couple of other things that are related, like the Cloud Connector version, and you see that changed as well here. There's a pinned tweet at the top here, the linking to a blog that lists all the things that are being tracked. Okay, we're doing okay for time. So, but I would like to sort of, dig deeper, a bit deeper with a tiny bit more complicated example. And actually, Matthias mentioned already the Osgi bundles. I guess that some of you know them already. In a nutshell, a bundle contains Java classes and some configuration that you can install as a unit dynamically and remove dynamically as well. And Cloud Integration uses Osgi bundles internally. So the question becomes, how can we use this knowledge as a jumping off point to learn something that's interesting? And in particular, are the iFlows that we develop deployed as a bundle? And if they are, we might be able to do some interesting things with that knowledge. So the first order of business becomes, how do I get access to the bundles that are installed in my Cloud Integration tenant? Okay, let me just skip to, this is the API documentation of the Osgi Java classes and interfaces, and this is the bundle interface. if I've got a bundle object, I can get a bundle context, which is how it interacts with the framework, basically. From that context, I can in fact get a list of all installed bundles. So that reduces the problem to, okay, now I need to be able to get one bundle, and from that I can get every bundle. And there's a solution for that as well. In the OSGI framework package, there's this utility class called framework util. And it has a really convenient method here that lets me get the bundle of a particular Java class. So if I can come up with a Java class that probably belongs to a bundle, I can use this method to get a reference to that bundle. So then I can reduce the problem to, okay, if I can come up with a Java class probably belonging to a bundle, I can get a list of every installed bundle. And I do have a candidate for just such a class, because every time you do scripting in cloud integration, you interact with a class called message, which is your which provides you with access to all kinds of information about the message that you are processing at that instant. So I think it's a fair bet that that class belongs to a bundle somewhere on the cloud integration tenant. Okay, so let me show you a bit of Groovy code here. This is in a nutshell what I'm trying to do. I've got a class that I believe to be in a bundle, and I use the framework utility class to get a reference to that bundle, and from that point I can get to the bundle context, which is where I get the list of all installed bundles. And from that, I will just basically generate a bunch of XML. For each bundle, I will extract some information. If I go back to the documentation of the bundle interface, some of this stuff is more interesting than others. The symbolic name is interesting, and the manifest headers contain a bunch of information about the bundle that would be interesting to see. Okay, so that's what I am extracting here, the headers and the symbolic name, and using the Groovy markup builder class to format this in XML.
So you do need documentation.
It happens. I put this in an integration flow. It's just as simple as the other one. It's basically just the code and an HTTP channel to be able to execute it from the outside world. Okay, so I'm running that now. Also, I put in up here the count of every bundle, should we be so lucky to actually get a list of them. So it might take a while to extract all this and get it back. Yeah, according to Postman, there's 2.5 megabytes of XML here. So 790